Hello everyone and welcome to this new Ruby on Rails course. In this course we're going to be using Ruby on Rails version 8 to create a website like you're seeing now. This website has Strike payments with a monthly plan. This website has OmniAuth. This website has posts where you have to be pro to actually view them. This website is actually a real website and it's my website and it's called MalachiRails.com. So in this course we're going to recreate this website exactly how it looks. We have a search button, we have a search thing. If we go to lessons we can filter by pro or by free. We have categories that we can add. This is just an embed from YouTube. Anyway guys, this is what we're going to be building in this video. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so assuming you have Ruby on Rails 8 installed, which you can check by doing rails-v, let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. So as you can see, we're going to run Rails new MalachiRails clone. And then we also need to add database. So our database is going to be PostgreSQL. And then we also want TailwindCSS styling. So we need to say CSS -CSS is equal to Tailwind. And our database is of course going to be PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL is generally the database that most Rails apps use. There's also another one called SQLite 3, but generally PostgreSQL is a lot more common because of its features and more flexibility. If you haven't heard of Tailwind CSS, obviously it's just a library for styling your application and making it look good. Essentially how it works is you put classes in your HTML elements and then it styles them appropriately. We're going to also add the play CDN so that every time we load our app, it uploads the styles so we can get styles real time. But in production, we're not going to do that because it will add too much load to our application. So once the app is complete, we're going to cd into MalachiRails clone and we're going to run a command called rails-g. Once I run clear, we're going to run a command called rails-g scaffold, and then inside of here we're going to call it post. The title is going to be string. Then we're going to say description text, then say thumbnail underscore URL is going to be string, the video underscore URL is going to be string, and pro is a boolean. So let me just explain what's going on here. As you can see, we have a thumbnail URL that's to get our thumbnails for the posts, a video URL that's to load our thumbnails for the video for our posts, and then a pro boolean. So if this is true, then we're going to only make the post available for pro users, but if it's false, we're going to make it available for everyone. So let's hit enter and then run Rails dbmigrate. Let's run Rails dbmigrate now. So now that we've run Rails dbmigrate, let's run Rails S. S stands for server, and we can actually just left click and hold control on the terminal and then it'll open up there. And as you can see, this is the screen you want as the home screen unless you've routed to another page. And then we want to add posts into here and we can see what we've been given as a post. So as you can see here, we have create and add posts. So we can just say create post. We can add the description, thumbnail URL, video URL, and pro. Create post, and as you can see, it says pro is true and the title is first post ever. So we already have this CRUD functionality. Very, very cool. If you've not done this before, this should be very, very fast for you, very, very cool for you, and you should love Rails already. Okay, so now that we're here, the first thing that we're going to do is actually make an edit to our application so that when we go to create a post, when we actually create the post, it doesn't say post/2 in the browser, because this is kind of a privacy issue where you don't want users to know how many posts are actually in your application. So what we can do is get a gem that's going to change it to whatever the title of the post is. This is better for privacy and it's also better for SEO. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to run rubygems.org, which is a website for our packages in Ruby called gems. Then inside of here, we're going to search up friendly ID. And then inside of here, we're going to add this gem. So as you can see, it has 49 million downloads. So we're just going to add the gem into the gem file. So let's go to our application. And if we go to gem file, then let's go inside of here. And inside of here, what we can do is just add it inside of here. And we can say custom gems above it, just so we know where our custom gems are. And now we have friendly ID. So let's go to the documentation and go to the home page. But notice that I didn't run any command after this. That's wrong. We need to run bundle install. So stop the server using Control-C and then run bundle install. And then as you can see, now we should actually have friendly ID as a gem. So as you can see, we're on the GitHub of friendly ID. So let's go down here and look at the documentation so we know how to use this gem. So we've ran our gem friendly ID and we've executed that with bundle install. So now we just need to add the migration, add slug to user, slug unique. So what we can do is copy this command, rails-g migration, add slug to user, slug unique. In fact, I'll just write it down. Then in the terminal, we can say rails-g migration, add slug to, and then we have to say posts because that's the actual model that we're going to be adding our slug to. The slug is essentially the feature that makes it so that you can add the URL as whatever attribute you're referring to. So let's go to slug and let's say unique. And unique is spelled UNIQ. So after that, we can just run enter, and then it's going to create our migration. Then we can just run the command Rails G friendly _ID. G stands for generate, and Rails is obviously the command we need to access Rails commands. So generating friendly ID is going to generate all the files that have to do with friendly ID. There shouldn't be too many. As you can see, there was just some migrations and one initializer, so just 2 files. And then what we can do is run Rails DB migrate. Again, what this does is convert the database to actually add new tables or change the database, and the database is represented by a file that I'll show you in a second. It says add column post string or post slug. So I added this column to posts. It added an index as well, which essentially makes this column load faster. And then now we're going to run clear. And once we have that, what we're going to do is run Rails S once again, but we're not done implementing friendly IDs. So as you can see, it says edit the app models user.rb file as the following. So what we need to do is essentially add this inside of our post.rb model. So what this means is that we need to go to post.rb, which if you don't know where it is in app models post.rb. This is created with every scaffold. And then what we need to do is add this inside of here. So it says extend friendly ID, which is essentially saying we need to use friendly ID's file. And then we need to say friendly ID name and use slugged. So inside of here, we don't have name as an attribute in the database. And the reason that I know that is because if we go to schema.rb, and then if we go down to posts, as you can see, there's no attribute called name. There's only title, description, thumbnail URL, video URL, and pro. So that's what we added earlier. So we're not going to be able to use name unless we actually add it to the database, but we don't need to do that. So let's just use title. And then there's one more thing that we need to do before this actually works, and that is go to controllers, post controller. When we go down and we say post.find params that expects ID, and that's in def set post end, usually at the bottom of the controller, or definitely at the bottom of the controller, we can say post.friendly.find. And what this is going to do is use the friendly ID so that we can actually use the title as the URL. So let's go back to the browser. Let's create a new post. As you can see, this post is post/2 because it's old and we didn't create it using friendly ID. But now if we new post and then we say like second post, and if we say create post, as you can see, the URL changes to second post. So now we've added friendly ID into our application. It has more privacy and it's more SEO friendly. Alright guys, welcome back. In the last video we added friendly ID so that our URLs could have a slugged URL. Next we're going to be styling our posts, adding a search filter, making it so that it actually embeds videos and making it look good. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go to my terminal. Inside of here I'm going to run clear, and then we're going to create a new controller called Rails G pages controller. So let's run Rails G controller pages. So that's the name of the controller, and then we're going to say home, pricing, and privacy. And then let's hit enter on this command. Okay, so now what we want to do is go to our application, and inside of pages home, we actually want to just say render partial, and then we're going to create a new partial in the post. So we're going to say post/post_list. And then we also need to pass in the post variable. So let's pass in locals, and then posts is equal to @post so that we know which post to actually display. So then let's go to posts and actually create this file. So let's go and create new file in the post folder, and let's say post_list.html.erb. And then inside of here we basically need to add our code so that we have a post list. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste it from my already built application, but essentially what I've added so far is if we have any posts in the application, then for all of the posts we're going to do this, and then we're going to link to the post with a data of TurboFrame top so that we can actually go to a new application. We add some classes, and then we add some Tailwind classes as well. And then if the post is pro, then after that we add this code. So if the post has a video URL, then what we're going to do is have an image tag to the YouTube thumbnail, but we're going to give in the post.video URL. So this is going to be a helper in our model so that we can actually get the YouTube thumbnail. Then we have a center play button. By the way, you can get this code in the description of this video, so you can just copy and paste it too. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to add this, some more styling, and we're going to add the title. We're going to say if the post is pro, then say pro. And then finally, we're just going to add when the post was created. And then also if there are no posts, we're going to say no post yet, check back soon for content. So now that we've done that, what we need to do is actually go to the pages controller, and we need to define posts here. So let's say post is equal to post.all. That should work. And then also what we're going to do is actually go to the routes.rb. And inside of here, what we're going to do is we're going to route to pages hashtag home, that our root of our application is over there. So add this line, root pages hashtag home, like that. And then what we're going to do is go to the application and see what it looks like if we go to the root of our application. So as you can see, it shows a link to the second post, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So if I go to the root of our application, it shows a link to the second post. And if we add more posts, so for example, I will go and I'll say back to post and then say new post, and then I say the third post. And this time I'm actually going to add a URL, because later we're going to need a URL once we add that functionality. So I'm going to add this URL. So I'm going to say embed, and if I add this inside a video URL, then we're going to be able to add it as a thumbnail. So now if I go back to the root of the application, as you can see, we're missing a method called undefined method YouTube thumbnail. As I said, we basically need to add this method inside of the model so that we can actually get the thumbnail. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is actually add this YouTube thumbnail as a little method. So let's go to apps, helpers, and then post controller or post helper. And then inside of here, we need to add this code. So as you can see, what we're doing is we're actually getting the ID of the YouTube ID, and then we're going to the link and we're actually defining YouTube thumbnail. First, we add it as a variable in regex. And with this code, now that we go back to our application and we refresh, as you can see, we actually have a link to the video and it shows its thumbnail. And if we click on it, then it actually goes to the post. So in the posts index, we're actually going to add this helper as well, or this partial as well. So go to posts index, and then inside of here, what we can do is instead of having all of this, we can just say render partial, and we can say post underscore list, and then after that we can add our locals. We can just say posts is equal to post. And the reason that you have to have our locals is because we need to basically give this partial access to the post variable, because partials do not have a method, so we cannot like add a class that can define it in there or add a method in our controller. So we basically have to pass in variables whenever we want to use partials that have variables. So we go to the post list, as you can see, it's using @posts. So if we didn't define it in locals, then it wouldn't know what @post is and we get an error. But now if we refresh, it shows everything. And the reason that it's not actually looking that good is because we need to add TailwindCSS. Go to TailwindCSS, and this is a CSS library that will make our app look good, and add the play CDN. So it's just one script tag. And so basically you just want to add this in application.html.drb, but it's extremely important that you add it in the head. And this is going to allow our application to use the Tailwind styles without having to run Rails after it's precompile. But obviously, when you want to have a production app, you don't want this play CDN. You want to download Tailwind CSS into your application. And the reason for that is because this play CDN essentially gets all of Tailwind. And if you download it into your application, it only gets the Tailwind that you need for your application. So with this play CDN, our load time is going to increase significantly compared to just having the gem itself. So now let's have a see and what it looks like. And as you can see, it looks quite different. Let's go to pages, home, and then inside of here we just need to add a div. So wrap the partial div around this, and then let's see what it looks like. And as you can see, now we have our post showing up in columns, and the reason for that is obviously because we added our grid to our class, so Tailwind made that work. So what I'm going to do is just edit the second post so that it actually has a video URL. So I'm going to add this tutorial that I just recently made, which is a tutorial about GitHub and Google OmniAuth, which we're going to be actually doing in this course. So you're going to see how to do that. Then we're going to update the post. And now if we go back to posts, we actually need to add this div inside of the post as well. Let's go to the post index.html.drb. So go to post index.html.drb, and then where it says the post lists, we're just going to add this div. We're going to wrap the div around the partial. That way we can actually view the posts and it's not stupid. Okay guys, so now that we've styled our posts and added the YouTube so that it actually works, the next thing that we're going to do is make it so that we have a navbar to search through the posts, and also add some more pages and also a footer. So let's go ahead and do that. So to do that, what we need to do is go to our application, and inside here in layouts, we're going to create two new files. We're going to say underscore navbar.html.erb, and then we're also going to say underscore footer.html.erb. Any file that starts with an underscore means it's a partial, which means it can be displayed on other pages. So it's like a partial page. So let's go to application.html.erb, and then inside of here, what we want to do is just before the yield tag, we want to render the partial. So we want to say render partial. We want to say layouts/navbar, and then after that we want to say render partial footer. So once we have that, what we can do is we can say footer, or we can just say footer in here as a placeholder to make sure it's working, and there's a footer in here. And then if we go back to our application, we're getting the wrong route, so let's go back to application.html.erb and add layout/navbar because that's where the actual thing is. So layout/navbar, and then layout/footer with f, small f. And then as you can see, now we have our footer and our footer, but obviously I added footer in navbar. So inside of here, we need to add navbar. Okay, so now that we have that, what this means is that these two things show up on every single page. So that's good. So now we just need to actually now add the navbar and footer. So for the footer, I'm going to add code that I already have. So as you can see, it's just adding some links and some Tailwind. There's no actual proper Ruby code here apart from the time, which is the year, time.now.year. And then you can add this too if you want. And if we add this, then as you can see, we're going to have a proper footer. So you don't actually have a pricing path. So I'm just going to go to our root and add a pricing path. And to do that, all we need to do is say get pricing. And after that, we just need to say to pages hashtag pricing. So now that we've done that, save the file, refresh. And as you can see, now we have a proper footer in our application. But now we need to add the navbar, which is a more difficult component. The first thing that we're going to do is go to navbar.html.aob, of course. Inside of here, I'm just going to paste this form. So what actually is this form? Well, this form is a search form. So essentially with this form, we're going to be able to search our posts, but we need to add some more data in the controller. So essentially all this form does is go to the post path with a method of get and a local of true. And then it has a search delay value of 300, which means when you enter a key, it takes 300 milliseconds to actually send the response. The controller, or the stimulus controller that it's going to use, is called search_controller, which we need to create. And it's looking for a turbo frame response of posts. Then we just have a text field inside of here. So we say f.textField query with the value of params query. And the reason that we have value of params query is so that when we enter something and then we actually search, we need to actually we need to contain that value inside of the search field so that it actually stays there and doesn't just disappear. Then we have a placeholder, an autocomplete of off, and a data action input, search submit. So what this means is when we input something, we want to actually submit the form. Obviously with the delay of 300 milliseconds so that nobody can absolutely break our form. Then we have some classes and some more SVGs. So now let's restart. As you can see, nothing happens at all. And the reason for that is because we don't have a stimulus controller. So that, as you can see here, this controller search, this is a new thing in Rails. Well, it's slightly new, where basically it's looking for a controller in JavaScript controllers, and it's called search controller. So we need to go and create that. So let's go to JavaScript controllers, and inside of here we need to say search_controller.js, and then inside of search_controller.js we need to have this code. So as you can see, we're connecting, so we console.log it, search controller connected, and then we have the submit event, which is extremely important. Here we're essentially just requesting the submit, and now let's go and see what happens in our form. So as you can see, now we actually are getting a query in our thing, but it's not actually filtering, and the reason for that is because we have no logic in the controller. If we look at where this is actually going, if we look at the navbar, as you can see, it's going to the post path, which means it's going to post hashtag index. So essentially all we need to do is go to the post controller, and then inside of here, after this post is equal to post.all, we need to add if params query.present, query is equal to params query, at post is equal to post.where, title I like or description I like, query. So this I like is using PostgreSQL, and we're essentially just filtering the posts based on the params query. And so we're saying if the query is like the title or the description, then we're going to filter it. But after that, we also need to actually respond with something. So that now we just need to respond with a format.html and then format.turbostream, render the partial post /post_list with the locals post of post. So now when we add all this and we go back to the application, as you can see, it should actually be working. And now we have a real-time search filter, which doesn't actually need to refresh the page. It just works. So as you can see, they're both showing up when I put in TH, but if I put in something like Z, then none of them are going to show up. And it says no post, check back soon for new content. So that is a real-time filter. I'm just going to quickly go back over how it works again. So as you can see in the navbar, we just have a form, a simple form that is saying, go to the post path. So we're actually going to go to the post controller, but because we're looking for a turbo frame, we're not actually going to go there. And then we have a method of get, a local of true, and a controller of search so that we actually submit the form with stimulus. So essentially on input, we want to submit the form with stimulus. We want to pass a query. So then it goes to stimulus. Stimulus is in the controllers, search controller. This is using stimulus. As you can see, it says stimulus. And then we basically just want to submit the form. And then this form obviously goes to the post controller and then the index action of the post controller. The params query was present or is present. And then because it's present, we're actually filtering the posts. And because we're actually filtering this variable, then we go down here and it responds with the turbo stream and it renders the partial. And because we're rendering the same partial on the page's index, that's why it filters the posts. Because essentially we're changing the variables that the post partial has access to. Because we're changing the variables the post partial has access to, that's why it changes the posts that are actually shown on the screen. And that's how it works. So that's the real-time search filter. Alright guys, so now that we've got a navbar and the posts are working, the next thing that we're actually going to do is make it so that only one user can create the post. So we're going to have a super admin, and this admin is going to be the only user on the whole page that can, on the whole website that can actually create posts. You don't have to add this part, but the reason that I'm adding this part is because on my website, that is the functionality that I have. I have one user, and that user is the only user that can create posts. In the future, I'm thinking of adding it so that people can apply to have their own tutorials on my website. Let me know if you think that's a good idea or not, and if anyone would have actually interest of having their own tutorials displayed on the MalachiRails website. However, let's get started on doing that. So to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to go to db-seeds.rb. So I'm going to actually explain how this file works. So go to db-seeds.rb. So it's in the db folder and then seeds.rb, which is down at the bottom. So to do this, what we can do is just paste in this, and I'm just going to explain what's happening. So as you can see, we're requiring a gem called faker, which we need to add to the gem file. Then we're destroying all the posts, and then we put seeding posts into the console, and then we're basically just creating 4 different posts. So the first one is 5 ways to speed up your web app, Ruby on Rails, then learn Ruby on Rails full course Instagram, and then Rails 8 course, how to deploy Rails 8 with Kamal to DigitalOcean, etc, etc. So once we have this, what we can do is we can actually go to the gem file and add gem faker, and once we've done this, what we can do is go to the server and we can run Rails DB reset and see if the seed is working. So as you can see, it says drop the database, MalachiRails clone development, drop the database test, created the database, and then created the database, and then seeded the post. So now if we run Rails S, and so now we have 4 different posts, and some of them are pro and some of them are not. And so that's how seeds work in Ruby on Rails. But we can also add something more powerful to the seeding thing. And so let's go to seeds.rb, and essentially what we can do is we can actually create a user, and then this user is the only user that can actually create or log in the posts. So to do that, I'm going to add this code, and essentially what we're doing here is we are displaying the email of the user that we're going to add. The email is going to be equal to rails application.credentials.dig, admin email, and the password as well. And so then when we say if the admin email is present and the admin password is present, unless the user already exists with the admin email, we're going to say user.create email, admin email, password, admin password, password confirmation, admin password, subscribed is true. We can just get rid of this subscribe true for now because I don't think that's a feature in our app yet. And then we can say puts admin user created, or else puts admin user already exists. So this would work if we actually had users in our application, but we don't have users in our application, so let's go ahead and add Devise. So for now, I'm just going to comment out all of this, and we need to add Devise to our application. So let's go ahead and add Devise. So Devise is a gem that we use to add Ruby on Rails authentication into our application. So let's go to the Devise GitHub and see how to do it. So essentially what you want to do is add Devise to your gem file. So we can just run bundle add Devise. So go to your terminal, I'll run clear, bundle add Devise, run enter on that command. That's going to add Devise to the gem file. It's a dependency that we need to add authentication. Very famous gem, has hundreds of millions of downloads. Then we want to say Rails generate Devise install. This is going to generate lots of files for Devise. As you can see, it says do all this stuff. Don't really worry about it too much, but we are going to add the notice and alert to our application. So let's go to application.html.erb, and then inside of here what we can do is add under the navbar, we're going to add a notice and an alert. Then after that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to run Rails generate Devise model, and instead of model we're going to say user. Before we run Rails db migrate, we need to add some columns to the actual user model. And so the first thing that we're going to need is a t.string, and we're going to call it provider. Then we're also going to add a t.string UID. Then we also need a t.string for avatar URL. And then we're also going to add a t.string for name, so we can get the name of the user. And then we also need t.string for Stripe underscore customer ID, a t.string for Stripe subscription ID, and then a t.boolean for subscribed. We need to say default is false. So this is going to save us quite a lot of time. Instead of adding the migrations later, we can just add it to this migration right now. So now let's run Rails db migrate and let's see if this actually works. So as you can see, we just created the table and it said create table users, added all the stuff, and now we can go to schema.rb. And as you can see in the users, we have all of this stuff. We have our provider, UID, avatar URL name, and we only need to add this one migration. First of all, I can just show you what that actually did. So if we go to our application and then we go to actually like user/sign in, first we need to run the server, run Rails S. So we go to user/sign in. It's actually going to show us our sign in link. So I can enter some details here and sign in, or I can sign up. But the thing is, it's 2025 now, and having to enter an email and a password confirmation quite long to actually sign up. So what we're going to be doing is adding OmniAuth, and OmniAuth means you can sign in with Google or you can sign in with GitHub. I'm sure you know what that is. So we're not going to be using this much, but for the actual main user, it's going to be very useful to the SuperAdmin. So let's go back to our application and let's go to seeds.rb. And inside of here, I actually commented all of this out, but we're going to uncomment it because what we're going to do is make this work. So we're going to create a super user that is going to be the only person that's able to edit the posts. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is go back to the terminal and we're going to run a command called editor is equal to code -- wait. And then after that, we need to run the actual command, which is Rails credentials : edit. So essentially what this command is going to do is open up the Rails credentials file with Visual Studio Code. And we need to add a flag of -- wait so that it waits for us so we can actually edit it. And so yeah, that's what it's going to do. So let's hit enter on this command and then let's edit it. So as you can see, now if we open this file, we need to actually open it. Then we need to add some stuff here. So what I'm going to do is at the bottom, I'm going to add admin, and then we're going to say email, and we can just add a random email. So we can say superadmin@gmail.com, and the password is just going to be superadmin123. So now that we've done this, if we save this file, and the way you save these credentials files is by just clicking X. And even though it says, do you want to save the changes you made too? If you say save, then it will save. And if we go back to the terminal, it's going to say file encrypted and saved. So now if we just make sure that that actually was encrypted and saved, we can go back and run the same command again. And as you can see, the details were saved in this file. So this is the way to safely secure data in Ruby on Rails, or in variables that you want to keep secret and don't want the world to know. This is the way with the Rails credentials edit. So now that we've done that, what we can do is actually run Rails DB reset and hope that the user is created, because it should be created given our code here. So let's run Rails DB reset. It's going to drop the database, create the database, and then seed the posts. And as you can see, email is superadmin@gmail.com, admin user created, Rails is done seeding. So let's run Rails S, and then let's go back to the server and let's sign in. So let's see if we can sign in with a user. So as you can see, we're just going to run superadmin@gmail.com, and the password was superadmin123. So I'm going to run remember me, and then I'm going to hit login. And as you can see, I was signed in successfully. And the reason that I was signed in successfully was because we just created the user. So that's how Devise works. Now we have user accounts in our application. So if you haven't done that before, it's going to be really, really cool for you. I've done it hundreds of times with Devise, so it's not that cool for me anymore. But yeah, this is one of the reasons Rails is cool, because we just have these gems that can really, really help you to add stuff quickly. So now we have user accounts in our application. But the thing that we actually want to do is make sure that only the user account is the one that's able to edit these posts. So in order to do that, what we need to do is go to post controller. So let's go to the post controller, and then inside of here, basically what we need to do is make a action that sets the user. So basically what we need to do is we need to say before action authenticate user except index and show. And what this means is make sure the user is signed in except for the actions of index and show, which is what we want to do. And then we also added before action ensure admin user, so that only the admin user can go to the new create, edit, update, and destroy things. So now to do that, what we need to do is we basically need to add a ensure admin user. So let's go down here. We need to say def ensure admin user. So inside of def ensure admin user, what we're going to do is we're going to say def ensure. We're going to basically do like this, but we need to say def, because we don't have .admin as a thing. What we're going to do is we're just going to say user.email is equal to Rails application.credentials.dig admin email. And then we're going to basically just redirect to root path. You must be an admin to perform this action. So let's go ahead and test our application and make sure that this is working. So let's go to our application. And as you can see, because I'm an admin, I'm actually able to edit the application. So I can say like 55 ways and update the post. As you can see, the post was successfully updated. But if I go and sign out now, which I can do by going to the route users /sign_out. What I'm going to do to test this functionality is actually just drop the database. So we're going to run Rails DB reset. And then what we're going to do is just try and edit a post by not being the admin user and test if the code works. So let's run Rails S. So as you can see, now if I try to edit a post, I'm not signed in. As you can see, it says you need to sign in or log in before, or sign up before continuing. Let me sign up. So I'm going to sign up using some random details. And if I sign up now, you must be an admin to perform this action. So because I'm not an admin, because I didn't sign up with that stuff that we created inside of our seeds.rb, I can't edit the file. So basically, this is a really, really cool way of adding admins into your application by just seeding them into the database. And it's extremely safe as well because we're using rails.application.credentials.dig. You never want to expose these details, so use rails.application.credentials.dig. Alright guys, so the next thing that we're going to do is add sign up and sign in and sign out links. So to do that, I'm going to go to the navbar and I'm going to first wrap the form with these 3 elements. And we're just going to add the elements at the end here to close them out like that, and then let's see how that affects our application. So as you can see now we have some sort of a navbar. Then I'm going to add this link, which is a link to the root path where I just have my logo, as you can see, like so. And then basically we just want a link to go to the post path, which we're going to call lessons. And then if we're not signed in, which is if we're not the current user, we want a link to the pricing path. So basically like so. Then I'm basically just going to change this form so that it's wrapped inside of another form. So that's wrapped inside of a thing. We're just wrapping it inside of a div, and that makes it look like this. And we're essentially just rendering a partial, which is the start button. So now let's go and create this partial. So go to the users. We're going to have to comment out profile path for now. But essentially now what we need to do is basically create the start button partial. So go to the terminal and run a command called rails g devise controllers. And then we're going to create the controllers for users. So we're going to create a users controller. And then what we need to do is just run the server again. And then what we can do is go to the users folder. And then where it says render partial user/start button, what we can do is just put this in layout/start button. And then what we're going to do is create a new partial called _start_button.html.erb. And then inside of here, we're going to add our start button. So we want to have this code instead of the start button, which is using a framework called Alpine.js, which makes it easy to use JavaScript in our application. And then we're also going to create another partial called users/devise_forms.html.erb. And we need to add a underscore at the start. And then inside of here, so add the start button into the users and then go to the navbar. And then inside of the navbar, we're actually going to put this in users. And then let's go to the users/start button. And then inside of here, what we're going to do is, oh no, we've already done it. Let's go to Devise forms. This is not a html.erb. We need to add html.erb. Then let's add an underscore at the beginning. And then inside of here, what I'm going to do is paste the code. So we're going to go to Devise forms. And then basically inside of here, what we want is the ability to sign up with GitHub. So now that we've done this, let's add this code, and these routes are not going to be available, but that's fine for now. We're just going to comment them out. And now if we refresh the page, we should have a start button. But first, let's go to alpine.js and add it to the application. So all we need to do is add this script to our application and then go to application.html.erb. And then inside of here in the head, we need to add this script. Now if we go back to our application, what we're going to do is create a profile path. So let's go to pages, profile. So we need to create a new page. So inside of the pages controller, we're going to go new. Inside of the pages folder, we're going to go new file, and we're going to say profile.html.erb. And then inside of the controller, we're also going to create a new action called def profile. And then inside of the roots, we're also going to do that. So we're basically just going to do the same thing, and we're going to say profile. And we're going to do 2 pages #profile, that's fine. And then basically inside of profile, what we're going to do is add this code so that we are able to sign out. So basically what we're saying is if current user, so if the user is logged in, then we're going to say hi current user.name user, and then we're going to get an image for their current user.url, avatar URL. And if they have a provider, then do that. And basically we're going to be able to sign out. So if we go and refresh the page, we need to start the Rails server. If we uncomment this link and uncomment this, now we should actually see the profile link. But before we can actually see it, let's add the default avatar.png to the thing. So let's go to flaticon.com. And then inside of here, what we're going to do is look for a profile. So we're just going to look for a simple profile icon. So I think this one looks all right. This black one. No, this one's good. So let's download this one, and then we need to add this to the thing. So all we're going to do is drag and drop this in there. So let's go to assets, images at the top, assets, images, and put it in there. And then let's just rename it to actually user.png is fine. Then all we need to do is just say user.png here, and then we'll have that as a link. And now if we go back to our application, as you can see, we have this user.png. And if we click on it, what happens is it says the asset default avatar was not found. So what we need to do is go to profile, and then inside of profile, we're just going to change this to user.png. And as you can see, now it says the user and the email that was signed in with and joined on the date. So now we're just going to sign out. and we're getting an error because we're trying to render the form. So inside of here, what we want to do is we actually want to just comment out these lines for now. The ends, save, refresh, and now we have a start button and it does like this. So now we need to actually add OmniAuth to our application. Alright guys, so the next thing that we're going to do is add OmniAuth. So we're going to be able to sign up with Google and also sign up with GitHub. So to get started, the first thing that we're going to do is get the gems. So we need 4 gems, and these gems are as follows. So we need OmniAuth Google Auth OAuth 2, OmniAuth GitHub, OmniAuth, and OmniAuth CSRF protection. So let's go back to our application. Let's go to gem file and let's add these gems inside of the gem file. And then let's run a command called bundle install to actually install the gems. So run bundle install. INSTALL. So bundle install, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Google Cloud Console. We're going to need to create a new project, and we're going to need to basically make it so that we have a Google client ID and a Google secret, a client secret. So what I'm going to do is literally just create a new project and create a new project on this website. So I'm going to create a new project and I'm going to call it MalachiRails clone, and then create. And then once I'm here, I'm going to go to API and services, go to the OAuth consent screen. And then once we're here, we're going to click create. So get started. And then we need to add the app. So I'm just going to say MalachiRails, add the user support email, then click external so we can make the app public. Then add the contact information. I'll just put that one, and then finish, and then create. Once we've done that, we're going to need to access our client ID and client secret. These are the details that we need in order to actually make OAuth work. So we're going to need to go to OAuth. We need to go to overview, and then let's click create OAuth client, and then hopefully it'll actually create. So we're going to click web application, then add, I'm just going to leave the name with web client 1, and then it's very important here, the authorized redirect URLs. So basically here you need to put your actual URL. So for me, I'm going to put http localhost 3000 / users. So the URI is going to be http :// and then localhost 3000 / users / auth / Google OAuth 2 / callback. And then we're also going to add another one, which is going to be the same, but for GitHub. So add GitHub, and then we're going to click create project. So now that we've got this, we're going to download the JSON and go into your OAuth client, and we need to find the JSON. So download the JSON. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to devise.rb. So go to devise.rb. And then inside of here, what we're going to do is we're basically just going to say config.omniauth. And then we're going to say Google OAuth 2. And then exactly, we're going to say rails.application.credentials.dig, OmniAuth Google Client ID. And then rails.application.credentials.dig, OmniAuth Google Client Secret. And then that's it. So now let's go to editor. So now let's go and edit our credentials and add these credentials. So I'm going to edit my credentials now, and I'm simply going to say, so we're going to say OmniAuth, and then we're going to add our Google Client ID and our Google Client Secret, and I'm going to get it from this JSON file. So copy and paste them in there. You can use Control F to find your client secret. So then we're going to add this, and then we're also going to add the GitHub ones. So let's go to GitHub and create a new, so go to github.com, and then pretty much we're going to go to the settings of github.com. So go to settings down here. This is just if you want to add GitHub as an OmniAuth, go to developer settings, and then we basically need to go to OAuth to apps. Then we can basically just say a new OAuth app, MalachiRails clone, and then we need to add the authorization callback URL, which is literally that, http localhost 3000 users / auth / GitHub / callback, and then that's literally all we need to do. We can just add that for now, and then we can register the application. So now we just need to get the client secret and the client ID. So we simply need to go GitHub client ID and add it in there. Then we need to generate a client secret. Need to use my passkey. So generate your client secret, get the client secret, and make sure you don't tell anyone your client secret, of course. So then basically just add it in there. But then let's save this file and go to Devise, and basically we need to say config.omniauth GitHub, and then rails.application.credentials.dig, OmniAuth GitHub client ID, and Rails, so like that. But the scope is not going to be user.email, the scope is going to be user public_repo. So now that we've done that, let's go to the routes.rb, and we need to basically add a route for our OmniAuth callbacks. So add this route, devise for users, controllers, OmniAuth callbacks, users / OmniAuth callbacks. And then inside of this file, we're going to add some code so that we can actually handle the OmniAuth. So it needs to be users, OmniAuth callbacks. So we're saying providers is equal to Google OAuth 2, Google, and GitHub. So then we're handling two methods. So we're going to have two methods. So when these methods are called, they're going to handle the auth. So we're going to go to the handle auth. So then it passes in the handle auth with the provider, obviously. Then it gets the user from the user.from OmniAuth. And if the user is persisted, then we're going to sign in or redirect the user. And else we're going to show them to the new user registration if something fails. So that's essentially what we're doing in this place. And if it fails, we're just going to go to the root path. Now let's go to the user.rb. So go to user.rb, which is in models user.rb. And then inside of here, we need to add this code. So we're saying OmniAuthable, and the OmniAuth providers are Google OAuth 2 and GitHub. And then we're saying def.self.from OmniAuth auth user.webprovider, the auth provider UID is the auth UID. If you remember, we added this column and this column just in a migration not too long ago, so that we have it in the schema. If I go back to the schema, as you can see, we have provider and UID, so that's how that's going to work. And then if we go back to the OmniAuth controller, we can, the user.rb file, I'll explain the code more. So we're saying user find by email, auth.info.email. And then here we're actually creating the user with all of the details that we need. So now that we have all this, I'd say we can go and see if this is actually working. So let's go and see. So let's go to our Devise forms, and then inside of here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to uncomment this line, and then we're going to save, and then what we're going to do is actually test out our application and see what the hell is going to happen. So first, just run your server, then I'll go to localhost, and let's see if we're able to sign in with OmniAuth, or sign up with OmniAuth. So I'm going to sign up with OmniAuth. And as you can see, it actually does bring me to the page, and if I can sign up, and then let's see what happens. And it says Google allow MalachiRails to access, continue. And as you can see, it's working, and it says successfully authenticated from Google account. And if we go to the profile, it says Google OAuth 2. So that's simply OmniAuth in Ruby on Rails. If you had any trouble, go to this guide, which I have a link into in the description. Alright guys, so the next thing that we're going to do is add categories to posts so that we're able to filter them by the category. So imagine we have a category that's like, I don't know, Hotwire or Turbo, or let's say we have a category that's on authentication, or we have a category that's about payment systems. We're going to be able to filter the posts via those categories. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create some models. So let's go and let's run these commands. So the first model that we're going to create is going to be a category model. So let's run Rails G model category, and then it's simply going to be name of string. Then we're going to run Rails G model categorization. Post is references. We're also going to go run category references. So hit enter on that command, and then we're going to run Rails DB migrate. And so now in the category model, we want to add has many categorizations, dependent destroy, and has many posts through categorizations. And then in the posts RB, we basically just want to have has many categorizations, dependent destroy, and has many categories through categorizations. And then we're going to go to the _form.html.erb, and what we're going to do is add this. So that's basically just going to allow us to add a select for all of the categories. So we're going to be able to select all the categories that are available. And then we also need to permit them inside of the controller. So let's go to the post controller, post_controller. And then at the bottom here where it says post params, we need to actually permit it. So let's go ahead and go with that through add category IDs. And then pretty much all we're going to do now is go to seeds.rb, and what we're going to do is add some categories. So we're simply going to category.create name Ruby, Rails, JavaScript, DevOps. That's fine. And then if we run Rails DB reset and then run Rails S, we're going to be able to add some categories to our posts, and then we'll create the filtering mechanism now. So now if I log in as the main user, so I'll go to users/sign-in, I'll log in as the super user, so superadmin@gmail.com, and then superadmin123. Now what I can do is if I go to edit post, I should be able to actually add some categories. So as you can see, I can. And now if I update this post and then we go to the terminal, let's actually see what happens. So as you can see, if we go to the post, we actually pass the category ID of 2. And now what we can do is just display the categories that the post has inside of the show page. So let's go to the show page, and let's go to the show page, and let's say, in fact, we can go to _post.html.erb, and inside of here we can simply say strong categories if post.categories.any. We can get rid of this @ sign, and then we can say post.categories.map name to sentence. And so now we should actually see And as you can see, it has the categories called Rails. So now what we want to do is actually to create a way to actually filter these posts by category. So let's go ahead and do that. So simply all we have to do is go to the controller, and then let's add some code in the controller so that we can do that. So let's go to the index action, and underneath here where it says we're going to add this code. So I'm going to say if the params category ID is present, then that post is equal to post.join categories, where categories ID params category ID distinct, else post is equal to post.all and categories. And so now simply what we're going to do is we're going to go to the index action, the index page of posts, and inside of here what we're going to do is add this form. So this form goes to the post path, which means it goes to the index action, the post index action, and we have a radio button tag with the category ID, the params category ID. And essentially for each category, we're changing the radio button tag and we're creating a radio button tag for each category. And then we're being able to filter and we're passing a category ID of each category. So then if we refresh the page and we actually try to filter these results, then we should actually be able to. So let's click on Rails and then click filter. As you can see, only this one shows up because it has a category called Rails. So that's how to add categories and filter by category in Rails. Now what we're going to do is actually make the description have rich text. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to run the command Rails action text install. And then what we're going to do is go to the model. So let's go to post.rb and we need to say has underscore rich underscore text, and we're going to say description. And then we just need to go to the form. So we're going to go to the underscore form.html.rb. And then inside of here, instead of saying text area, we need to say rich form.rich underscore text underscore area. And so now that we've got this, it should actually be working. Let's run Rails db migrate and then run Rails s, and let's actually run Rails db reset. It's going to work. So run Rails db migrate, and then let's run Rails db reset, and then let's run Rails s, and let's see if we can now add bold and italicized text to our post. So we're going to say I need to log in, so I'm going to log in as the superadmin@gmail.com, superadmin123. And as you can see, now we have rich action text in our post. So now we can actually, so I can add a description, add a description, and we can bold it, and that's actually going to have its format. So for example, if I go like this and I add some spaces here, it's going to keep that format. So if I update the post, as you can see, it actually keeps that format. So it's pretty cool. And we can also italicize, we can add images, we can do whatever. So that's how to add action text. And then the next thing that we're going to do is actually style this page so that it looks good. So to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the post.rb, and then inside of here, we're basically just going to add a scope, and we're going to say scope pro is equal to where pro is true. And then we're going to add another scope, and it's going to be called scope free is equal to where pro is false. While we're here, I'll just validate all of this stuff. So now we're just going to go to the show page, and we're just going to copy this stuff in, and basically this is just going to style it all up. So if the post is pro and we're not signed in and we're not subscribed, then basically we're going to show the post. We're going to make sure that the user subscribes. So we're going to say subscribe to unlock this video. This video is for subscribers only. And then else we're going to show the video. Now let's go and see what happens when we actually go to a post. So as you can see, it says, so now because we're on a pro content, this video is for subscribers only, so it only shows it. But if we go to a video that's not for pro people, then we can actually see it and we can have a look at the video. So all that styling worked. If I want to edit it, I can add some categories. And so yeah, that's how to style the post. And we added our categories as well, so that's cool. Okay guys, so the next thing that we're going to do is implement a payment system using Stripe. So what we're going to do is create a pricing page. Then on this pricing page, we're going to have a tier called Pro. And basically you can join this tier for like €15 a month. And then you can actually get access to all of the Pro videos. So it's going to be done using Stripe. So basically I'll just show you how it's going to work. Imagine I click on start here. I have to sign up first. I'll just sign up. And then I go to subscribe. And as you can see, I click on the monthly plan. So I click on the monthly plan, I click start, and then I'm taken to the Stripe checkout, and then I check out. So this is exactly what we're going to do. Let's go for it. Okay, so on the pricing page, we need to add our styling and our tiers. So let's go to views, layouts, or views, pages, and then pricing. And simply on this page, I'm going to paste in what I have in my application. So I'll paste everything I have in here in. And as you can see, it's just like a pricing pan with 2 tiers. And I have this button, which goes to the create checkout suggestion path. And as you can see, you have to add turbo false on these. And we need to create this route now. We also have this one. So basically, let's go and create these routes right now. So go to routes.rb. And essentially, what we want to do is add these routes. So we need post, create checkout session, to pages, create checkout session. And then get subscription success, the pages hashtag subscription success. Then what we're going to do is go to the gem file and we're going to add the Stripe gem, which is a gem we need to actually get Stripe. So let's add this gem into the gem file, and then let's run bundle install. So run bundle install, and then we're also going to need to create a Stripe initializer, and we're going to need to set the API key. So if you haven't already, go and sign up to Stripe if you want to actually do this, and you're going to need to add quite a bit of information, but it's going to be worth it. So I'm going to go to my initializer file, add stripe.rb, and then inside here I'm going to add my key. I'm just going to say stripe.api key is equal to rails.application.credentials.dig stripe secret key. And you find this in the Stripe dashboard. I'm not going to show you mine, obviously, because I don't want it to be leaked onto the internet. So I'm going to go to the editor and actually put this in there, but I'm not going to show you it because I don't want to leak it. So I'm just going to go editor is equal to code -- wait, and then we're going to go Rails credentials : edit. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go to the pricing page, and we're actually going to save, and we're going to see if we actually have access to the stuff. First, we need to start the Rails server, of course. Okay, and so now that we've done that, we actually have access to the monthly plan and the yearly plan. And if we click on start, let's see what happens. We haven't added the code in the controller, so we're probably not going to be able to go there. Shouldn't take us anywhere. And let's just go to the navbar and add the pricing page, or the pricing thing. So just say link to pricing path, and if the current user is not subscribed. So then go to pricing, and then if we click start, as you can see, it says the action create checkout session could not be found in pages controller. So all we need to do is add these two actions, and then we're done, and then we're going to deploy our app. So in the pages controller, all we need is two actions. The first one is def create checkout session, and the second one is def subscription success. So in the first one, we're basically saying in the button we pass in the param of plan, and we need to pass in the plan param to be able to actually choose between monthly and yearly. So if the plan is yearly, then we dig for the yearly price ID, and if the plan is monthly, then we dig for the monthly price ID. These are the price IDs that we have to get to create in Stripe, the dashboard itself. And so basically we just create a session for the user. We say the customer email is the current user.email, your payment method type is card, and the success URL is the subscription success URL, and the checkout session ID, and the cancel URL is the pricing URL. And then on subscription success, user just turns to having subscribed to true. Subscription successful, you now have access to pro episodes. So all we have to do now is add these two environment variables to our Rails credentials, and then we're going to be able to make this work. So basically go to Stripe, create your two products, and then add the price IDs there. So I'm going to edit my credentials once again and add the price IDs. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to run Rails S, and hopefully everything should be working and we should be able to actually check out. So now when we actually go and create our products, we should actually go to the Stripe checkout, and as you can see, we do. And we can see that it is working. Because my app is actually live, I'm not going to subscribe, but what you can do is set it to test mode in Stripe and then log in, and then you'll be back to the application and it'll say you're a pro member. Alright, so that's pretty much our application complete. Now I'm just going to show you how to deploy it via render. So let's get started. Right guys, so to get started deploying this project to render so we can get this online and show our friends, what we're going to do is first create a new GitHub repository. So I'm going to create a new GitHub repository. I'm going to say MalachiRails clone, and then we're going to click create repository. Once we've done that, we're just going to git init and then git add dot. But before we actually push, we're going to add some files so we can actually connect to render, and we're going to change some things. So first we need to go to bin, and then we need to add a file called render. So let's go to bin and then add a file called render build, render-build.sh. And then inside of here, we basically just need to add our commands. So on build, we're going to run these commands. And then we're going to go to production.rb. And inside of here where it says config.cache store, we're going to change this to memory store. And basically the reason is because we don't want our solids to be stored in the database, because then we're going to have to create some special tables for them. We just want them to be stored in memory. And so we're also going to have to comment out these two lines so that we don't get an error saying like solid cache tables is not being created. And then we also need to go to cache.yaml, and we need to comment out the database line. Once we've done all that, I think we should be good to push to GitHub. So let's go ahead and do that. So push your code to GitHub. We're going to have to push again soon, don't worry. And then once we've done that, we're going to navigate to render, go to the dashboard, and then we're going to click on new, and we're going to click on web service. So I'm just going to click on, I'm going to go from Git provider and MalachiRails clone. We're going to go from that. And then we're going to select our project MalachiRails, production, language, we're going to select Ruby. And then inside of the root directory, Oregon, yep. and then the build commands. So where it says build commands, we're going to add two more things, and these are going to be .bin/renderbuild.sh and then .bin/rails dbmigrate. So basically, we're going to run the renderbuild.sh file that we just created, and then we're also going to do that. And then in the start command, we need to actually add a Rails server. So do ./bin/Rails server, and make sure you add your semicolons. Then we're going to click on free, and then for the Rails master key, we're going to add our Rails master key. So go to config Rails master key, and then put it in there. And we're also going to add our Postgres database here. So basically, we need to go and find the Postgres database. So we're going to say database URL, and then we need to create a new database. So let's go and create a new database. So let's click on Postgres. I'm just going to say MalachiRails clone DB, and then inside of here we're going to select the project. We can leave that as blank. We can leave that as blank. PostgreSQL version blank or 17, and then we'll click on free, and let's click on create database. And then once this database is created, we're going to add the internal database URL to this, and then we should be good to go. So I got an error which said that I cannot have more than one active free tier database, but I suppose you won't get that error, so I'm just going to use the other database that I have for this application. So add the database URL, and then we're going to click on deploy web service. So click on deploy web service, and let's troubleshoot our errors. So right now it's just installing all the packages that we need. Deploying in Rails is usually a project in itself. So like if your project takes a week to create, imagine deploying is going to take another week. No, it shouldn't take that long, but it usually is a little bit of a hassle, and there is always some errors to it because every app is different and every setup is different and every version of Rails is different. But we're probably going to run into some errors now, but that's fine. We'll be able to troubleshoot them, and it's just important not to get stressed. For example, now it says build failed. And I think the reason that it says build failed is because the PG connection was bad. So connection to server on socket port 5432 failed, so there's no such file or directory. So pretty much what we need to do is we need to go to database.yaml, and then inside of here where it says database username, we're going to add a URL, and basically here we can just say env MalachiRails clone database URL, but instead of MalachiRails clone, we're just going to say database URL. So now let's save this and then add it to GitHub. So let's commit again, and then we're going to say git commit added db URL, and then git push, and then hopefully because we have that in there, now we're not going to get that PG error. So now all we need to do is actually push this again. So let's deploy latest commit, and it says deploy will start after the current deploy completes. So let's see if it works. And here I actually got a good error because I got PG duplicate table error relation post already exists. This is the error I actually wanted to get, because that means that when I tried to Rails DB migrate, the post was already there, and that's because I'm using a database that already had a post table. So because I'm using a database that already had the post table, the build failed. So to fix this, what I'm going to do is create a new database, and I'm just going to say like MalachiRails and this time I'll actually just select the basic and then click on create database, and then I'm going to use this database now for the application. So I'm going to reset the database URL to the new one, and then I'm going to save, and we're going to hope that this actually builds correctly this time. Okay, so I just deployed using the new Postgres database URL, and I get the error, the cable database is not configured for the production environment. Available database configurations are default, development, test, and production. So I've run into this error before, and pretty much what it's saying is if we go to the cable.yaml file, the production is not configured, and so what we need to do is actually configure it. So what we could do is connect it to a database, and that way all of our cache would be stored in the database. But what we're actually going to do is connect the make it match to the development and make the adapter async. So if we do this, then we should not get this error. So I'm going to deploy this now, and let's see if it works. So I'm going to do git commit changed cable config to dev, and then we're going to do git push, and then this time it's going to work. So now I'm just going to do manual deploy latest commit, and as you can see, it's deploying now the new commit on GitHub, changed cable config to dev. Okay, and in so doing that, it actually works this time, and it says deploy live. So now I'll go to the application, and this time it says undefined method subscribed, and that's because we haven't actually defined that method, so I need to do that. And the reason for that is because in the navbar, we're actually accessing if current user dot subscribe. So if the current user is not subscribed, but if the user is not signed in, then we're not going to have access to this variable. So we simply need to say if current user, and then we can say if and then end, and then that way we're always going to have access to this variable. What we could do is just be fancy, and we could say if current user at the end of this, and then we could just get rid of both of these if statements, and then let's commit again. We're going to do git commit got rid of if user subscribed, and then we're going to do git push, and then we're going to commit again and deploy again. I'm going to do manual deploy latest commit. And so now when we go to our application, it's actually working at MalachiRails clone.underender.com. But one thing we forgot to do was to add Rails dbc to the build commands. So what we can do is actually just ssh in and then run Rails dbc. We're not actually able to do that on a free instance. You're only able to do that on a paid instance. I just realized, so we're not gonna be able to do that. But yeah, if we try to sign up, if you try to sign up with Google, you're gonna get this error, which is access blocked. The app's request is invalid. And the same with GitHub. All you need to do is go to the redirect URIs and then change it to, and then you need to add a new redirect URI to this link, so that it's actually like MalachiRails clone.unrender.com /users/auth/Google auth 2/callback, because currently all we have is localhost, so you need to add this there. I'm not going to do that, but that's how you do it. Instead, I'm just going to sign up using a _signup. Instead, I'm just going to sign up the old-fashioned way with the _signup. So I'm going to go to sign up. I'm going to add my email 12356 sign up, and then as you can see I've signed up successfully. The default avatar image is there. I've got my email here. I've got my signed in with email, and everything is working. Alright guys, so if you've made it this far, you've successfully completed the Ruby on Rails 8 course. In this course we created obviously MalachiRails.com. This is a new website I've just created, and on here I'm going to have some premium Rails content. I'm going to start creating tutorials of all kinds, so check this website out. So if you're watching this video in the future, check this website out. You might find some real value from it. It costs €15 a month to sign up, so I think it might be real worth it. Guys, if you like this course, subscribe for more, like the video, and drop a comment for suggestions and any improvements I can make in future courses. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.